I just looked at the attorneys describe it as the four corners of the piece of paper, what was on there. And so that's what we got out there. Now let's talk about things that are, I call them the priorities. Some of these may not be in any interest to you, some more to others, but generally, these were considered some of the top. With all that was done up there, I can't possibly cover everything unless you guys want to bring in lunch, dinner, and sleeping bag. So, election integrity. Couldn't get anything done in the previous session. In the 86th, it died. In the 87th, it died. And the battle on this was strictly along party lines, very strongly upon party lines. I think the issue is unquestionable. I mean, they keep asking, where's the fraud? Truman, where's the fraud? Well, I'll tell you, it would be easier for you to go on a weekend camping trip, build a fire, and bring home a bucket of the smoke to prove that you had a fire. Because you can't get any data. You cannot get the information. Those of you who work the polls understand. You can't take pictures, you can hardly take notes, you can't take videos, and those little electrons have a way of just disappearing. And so there is no way. The other, as I mentioned earlier, our the laws today are a patchwork that began back when we had hand-marked paper ballots, all the way up through as technology has changed. It's added new sections to the code that are even inconsistent with each other. And the way it's written gives judges a lot of latitude in how they interpret it. And so in many cases of what the concern is not so much that the law was being broken, that it was being not interpreted as it was intended to be. I'll give you a couple examples. Central County. The law requires that the poll watchers be in the room with Central County. We have locations in which the room, I don't care what size it is, they're buried in there. They line like this. They line the chairs up on the side of the wall, tell the poll watchers to sit there. They put a set of dividers right here, and over here they do the counting. In other places, they have them in the room next door. They have a glass window they can watch through and use a telephone to listen to what's going on in there. That's pretty much outside the law. But the one in here, our answer was, hey, they said they had to be in the same room, and we met the requirement. Another example was the drive-through voting that was picked up. Now that was a violation of the law, but they worded it as though we're not really violating the law because this is the same as curbside voting. Now we know curbside voting is for handicap, and it's a very valid. We need that. There's no question. They're handicapped because they're afraid they're going to get the COVID, and so that's the excuse they use. So they felt that they were within the law. So down in Harris County, they set up 10 drive-through voting locations. 9 of them were in heavily Democrat precincts, 1 in a predominantly Republican precinct. That was early voting. Near the end of early voting, our Attorney General put out an opinion letter, which is all he can do. He can't do anything about things like that. He put out an opinion letter, and he did. He said that drive-through voting votes collected on election day will probably not be allowed to be counted. So Harris County shut down 9 of the drive-through voting locations. They shut down the 9 that were in the Democrat precincts and left the 1 open in the Republican precinct, hoping there'd be a whole lot of votes go there, and then they'd have to be able to throw them out. The other one, again, did not break the law, but we put in there, we had in there that there had to be a homogeneous, even distribution of polling locations throughout a district based on the eligible voters that live in the district. That's everybody. I didn't talk about minorities, didn't talk about black, it didn't talk about Hispanic or anything like that. It just said we're all eligible voters, which is what we ought to be talking about. I mean, we're all Americans, and we should be. Get rid of the hyphenated when we want to talk about describing things. We're all American. Everybody's vote should count, and everybody's vote is equal. And so having an equal access to voting is one of the most important things out there. Well, the Democrats came back at us on that, and this is where they started moving into their argument was that we were racist. And instead of describing it Republican versus Democrat, they always described their communities as black or brown. Those were their words that they used. And they said, if we have to do this distribution the way you're talking about it, our black and our brown neighborhoods are gonna lose up to 40% of their polling locations. This happened late at night, and so there wasn't a lot of argument. It kind of dawned on me after later, what they were telling me was they had skewed the opportunity to vote, so they had most of their voting locations in the Democrat predominant areas and fewer in the Republican areas, and they were gonna have to change that and make it even across the board. But they couldn't admit what they had to do, so they had to make it a racist argument. And that's how they have turned this whole thing and turning it in, because there is nothing more despicable than racism. And so they use that as the argument all the way through it. And even when we said, okay, people get confused about when's the poll open. I'll bet you everybody in this room at one time or another says, what time's the poll open? What time's it close? You know, what day is it open? So we set a schedule for the state, hours and days that the polls were to be open. So it'd be uniform and everybody know when it happened and so on. And so we had the polls opening, even on Sunday. We said, okay, we'll open them at 1 o'clock on Sunday. We're racist because they wanted them open at 11 o'clock. And I never could figure out that was what the words that were on the floor in there. So that's what they throw at us, okay?
Bring the buses to the church.
Yeah.
Buses.
But anyway, but those are some examples of where it is, not to mention all the other stuff that goes on. Now, one change I had that was in there that wasn't in there, but I think we're going to get it in the upcoming try at it, is to make a somewhat of a major change that really isn't a big change at all. And that is, right now we have 3 voting processes. We have mail-in ballots, we have early voting, and we have election day. All 3 of those, they operate differently. 26 other states have an election period. You start with early voting, and the last day of voting is election day. Makes it much simpler, easier on the machines, easier on the people, and it allows you, with the paper trails that are going to be there with paper ballots, to absolutely have an auditable trail from the precinct to Austin, and everything in between, every step of the way. And then hopefully we'll get that in our next bill. But anyway, that gets us through the elections that what we have to get done. We got it out of the Senate, but that's the bill they walked out of in the House at the end of the session. Electric grid security, talked about the weather side of it. The bill I've had in the past to protect from EMP and GMD, again, got it out of the Senate, but it died in state affairs in the House. Vaccine health freedom reform. The only bill we were able to get passed was prohibiting the vaccine passport. Businesses cannot require you to show your proof of vaccination if you go do business with them. What we weren't able to do is to protect your individual right to refuse a vaccination if your employer requires it. And we're going to come back and continue with that, particularly now that we're seeing the death toll from vaccines continues to rise, the health problems, and what we're finding is happening to women of childbearing age and to men of happening to them. There's got to be a change here. I fundamentally believe that you have the right to refuse a medical procedure. The argument that this got a little chuckle from that I argue says, my body, my choice. Ever heard that before? Well, this is where it's applicable. It's true, because it is your body. The other way, it is not your body. It's another body God created.
It's called assault.
Yeah. So, religious freedom. We got a couple of bills passed that, some of us went out after is one of the main things we have to do no matter what happens in the future. And that is to make sure that our churches are never closed again. Absolutely. And so, Matt Shaheen from Collin County and I worked together on a bill that made churches, church services, and their functions essential. Could never be shut down again by city, county, any organization, or the state, or the federal government in Texas. They are essential, they remain open, with one exception, and that is if there's a general evacuation of an area for whatever reason, and everybody's closing down and getting out, then it can happen. We thought we were all the way to the governor's desk, had one little change in the Senate, so we had to go to conference, and while we're in conference, the governor's office wanted us to take out the word essential. And so I said, why? And he said, well, the federal government may come up with a different word next time and call it something different. I said, well, we get words in there that cover, they just can't do it. But people, they recognize the word essential, they've heard it. It's the second most frequently used word in the last 14 months. And this is what they understand. They were either tagged as essential or non-essential. And so, no, we can't take that out. Oh, what, we just have, I said, if you insist on taking the word out, I'll kill the bill. I won't let you get a bill that's a title that does nothing. I'll kill it. He looked at me, the eyes got big, like, you would do that? I said, you bet your bippy I'd do it. So the bill got passed, it's essential. Churches are essential. This is one. This is one that's hard for me to talk about, but I have to, and you have to listen. And more than that, you've got to help do something about it. I didn't even know this problem existed until 2 years ago, the last session. Most of you, and I met James Younger, Jeff, and learned about it. And then we had a press conference and hearings on it. And what I learned was so utterly disturbing, disgusting, that it was hard to even talk about this. Charles Perry had a bill, and I had a bill on it. His was got out of the Senate first and died in the House. There were two of them that were over in the House. One in the House never got anywhere. This is about children. This is not about 18-year-olds. This is once you get to be 18, you get to make your own choice. Right? This is about doing something to young children, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, of either drugs or surgery that permanently change their life. And the argument I got that against me on the floor down there from the Democrats was, you say you're a Christian, but you're messing with God, because God doesn't make a mistake, and He made those kids, whatever they are. And I said, wait a minute. I said, no. God doesn't do everything all at one time. We are developed over a period of time, and He's got a step in our development that makes a major change when the baby leaves the womb, and another one when they reach puberty. And when they reach puberty, 98% of the kids that suffer from dysphoria figure out what their parts are for and who they really are, and they're just fine. Those who don't, they raise the risk of suicide goes up by a factor of 20 times more likely. We had testimony from people who had transitioned and back again, and one of them went back again and then back again. But people, what happened in there, the doctors, it was overwhelming testimony to the end. And right here in Dallas, you've got a center, a hospital, the Genesis Center, that does between 400 and 450 castrations a year and double mastectomies on little girls. And we got one in Houston doing the same, and another one in another city. that we have to put it into this thing. And so I've asked the governor to put this on the agenda for the upcoming special session. Also, the second part of that, UIL sports, I just put those together, they're closely related. How many of you remember how hard the fight was to get Title IX so women could actually have sports they could play in and not have to compete with men? Well, they did. It was a lot of work in there. And I think, everybody understand there is a physical difference between men and women? That there is a physical difference there, and it's demonstrated and used. One example is the lady that holds the world's record for the mile run. Terrific athlete. She holds records in almost every continent in the world. Yet there are over 300 high school boys that have a better time than she does. We have girls that are not making the team because they were displaced by boys who decided to self-identify, and that's all it takes. All it takes is is self-identification, and we have many of incidents of events being lost to a transitioned girl in there. So I think what I don't understand is where in the world is the outrage from the women over this? It is definitely quiet out there on this issue. Second Amendment protection. I will say that this is one area that those of you who understand the importance of what our founding fathers recognized as our right to self-defense, our God-given right to self-defense, should be very pleased with what's happened. There were multiple bills passed. One of the biggest was the permitless carry. And for those that don't quite understand it in there, that bill does not allow anyone to carry a gun that could not pass the background check if they were to take one. And if they do, they have committed a felony. And so nobody is going to, as legally now, can carry a gun who could not do it before. One of the problems we were faced with, it was brought out very clearly in the hearing, primarily by law enforcement, is that, we got two groups of people who can carry a gun. We have those who get a license, and they can carry it either open or concealed. And you have those who can possess a gun. They can buy it, they can sell it, they can keep it in their home, they can walk all over their property with it, they can put it in their car, drive anywhere in Texas, put it in their boat, go anywhere they want to. But if they go to the store, go downtown in their car, they have to leave their gun in their car to go inside. Number one theft in Texas there are guns out of automobiles. The number one source for guns used in crimes were guns stolen from automobiles. So this will eliminate that or significantly reduce it. And the data from the other states that had done a similar bill ahead of Texas showed that to be the case where crime actually went down in all but one of them. And we got one state that actually has 0 gun laws. Their law books say nothing about guns at all, never have, and I doubt that they ever will. And they have one of the lowest crime rates in the nation, and that's Vermont. Now you compare that to Illinois with Chicago, which has the most strict gun laws in the country outside of DC, and both of those have the highest crime rate with guns in the nation. And so that, and also I was a joint author on this. I was joint author on the bill with Senator Donna Campbell, which now allows you, if you stay in a hotel or a motel, you don't have to, no longer have to lock your gun and leave it in the car. You can take it into the hotel with you, even if they have a 30-6 sign up. So you can take your gun and keep it in your room with you. Again, cutting down on the thefts of guns. Protecting life. This was a major, major bill. It did not satisfy the abolish abortion folks who they're just as opposed to abortion as those of us who supported this are, but we recognize that just because we pass a law, that it is not necessarily an effective law. And so, because right now, Texas has, on its books, it's still there, the law that was in place when Roe versus Wade was passed, making abortion illegal. As a matter of fact, it can send a woman to jail for 2 years for getting an abortion. I don't think anybody wants that to happen. But that's what they wanted. But what this does, and what makes this different than the other bills in the past, that we think will survive the Supreme Court making a ruling on it, because we didn't make abortion illegal after the heartbeat. We made it a civil offense. We put it in the civil side and gave everybody standing, and so that anybody can take a doctor to court and sue them for committing an abortion. And that is going to make every doctor think twice and make it difficult. They won't be able to get insurance for it in there. So we think this will be a model for the rest of the country that will significantly reduce the number of abortions, because that's about 12 weeks there with the heartbeat.
And we are a litigious society.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Education. I mentioned that earlier. We protected all the funding and the programs and put in place new programs to try with additional tutors to help the kids catch up. We've got a real challenge in some areas for those schools. I mean, we don't have to worry. I'm trying to remember the name of the school over in Denton. We have one school in Denton that never shut down, never required masks. They operated as though nothing had happened. And they did real fine. They never had an outbreak. They never had a problem over there. And now that we're learning that kids don't even, don't even take it home to grandma and grandpa, what we did in our schools, we're going to find it has become more and more ridiculous. And the damage we've done to the kids that they will never recover. I really feel for our 10th and 11th graders, because they aren't going to recover from this. They will graduate. I mean, we'll graduate, but they will have lost a year. There's not time enough for them to recover. Some of the other topics, we did ban the defunding of police. A big effort to get that done, and the camping ban. Some of these were kind of aimed at Austin, the People's Republic of Austin. Down there, they still haven't done anything about it. It's if you haven't been to Austin, the homeless problem down there is beyond belief. We had 2 senators that had relatives that were accosted on the street. One ended up in the hospital and almost lost an eye. Kay was out walking, and thank goodness for a motorist that stopped and got out of his car and came around and defused what was probably could have gotten really ugly, and got her across the street and on her way. I came home one night and got to the door to get into the condo and couldn't get in. There was one laying in the door, just right there in the door, and I didn't want to wake it up at all. I didn't know if it was male or female, so I had to go around the other side of the building to get in. The City Hall is ringed, 3 rows of tents deep, all the way around City Hall put up. And so it is truly gotten out of hand. But now this will make some people happy and others not so happy, but by golly, we got alcohol to go. You can pick up your dinner at the curb, and they can bring your margaritas out to you, and you can now buy beer at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. But we also got rural broadband. Now this is not necessarily a rural area, but in those areas where we have real problems trying to use the internet for education, we got it started to get the rural band in. Now, some of us tried to say, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to make porn an opt-in, not an opt-out for our kids. Got pushed back on it, and we got one little piece that said the commission will study. I don't know what there is to study on it, but we tried, but couldn't get it done. And the ban on vaccine passports, that will help, but we got a long way to go to protect people and protect individual rights there. Some that passed were Critical race theory, we got a bill passed, but it's a weak one. It is not what we need. What they're teaching these kids in school is basically hate. It is hate-filled. Folks, you know, I grew up in the 60s. I was there when the Kennedys were shot. I was there when Martin Luther King was shot, and I saw what happened. I mean, I rode on the buses, I ate at the lunch counters. I know what life was there. I know where we got to, where we had climbed to. We had gotten to where we came together and we elected a black president. We had a black first lady that was one of the most popular lady in the country, in the world even. But we had a leader who wanted to undo what had been done. And now that's being continued. They'll divide us along economic lines, along race lines, along religion lines, every way. That is what the socialists do to destroy society so government can take over more of it. And that's what's going on with this. And that's exactly what's in the critical race theory, or what's being taught in there. And we have got to stop it. We've got to get it out of the schools. Between that and the LGBT agenda, those are two things we've got to get out. But it's going to take you guys showing up at your school board meetings, paying attention to what they're doing, holding them accountable, and not putting up with people on the school board that will not stop this kind of garbage being taught to our kids. Constitutional carry bill, got a couple little things that need to be fixed on it. I think we can do that. But vaccines, we need to have 100% freedom. DeSantis in Florida, he understands it. You know, the cruise line said they were going to require vaccines, and he said, not in my state you aren't, and the courts have now upheld him on that. We need the same thing here. Your choice. If that's what you want to do, you should be able to do it. No one should require you to take a vaccine. Okay, just a little bit about some bad bills that were killed. The 313, this is one of those things that cost you a lot more in tax money with schools because of tax abatements that are given to business, particularly to wind and solar, that provide no economic benefit from it. It was up for renewal. It never made it to the floor, so it is going to be dead. Gone. This one, somebody thought it'd be a cool idea to require the chairman and the vice chair of the Republican Party, just the Republican Party, to run in the primary. We got that killed. House Bill 3, this was an atrocious bill. This was supposed to be the bill to rein in government overreach, government executive power overreach. It just codified what the governor did before and actually expanded his powers. It was an incredible fight of what they were trying to do with this. The bad side is we got nothing, zero, zilch passed to change the authority of the executive office to declare a disaster or what they can do once they declare it. We got nothing done. It all died in the House. Also, this will make some people happy and some not so happy, but this is the way it is. Another big push to legalize gambling in Texas across the board. It got stopped, as did marijuana. Big push for marijuana. Now, the one thing that did pass, and this is something that I changed my position on, just like I changed position on quality pre-K, was on medical marijuana. As I learned the benefit to our veterans who suffer badly and to children with things like epilepsy, that the drugs they have to take are as damaging to their liver, kidney, heart, lungs as anything else, and understanding that these drugs that people take for cholesterol that destroy their liver, and the other pharmaceuticals without the opioids and so on, to deny these veterans and kids the relief they get with the medical side. It is not a gateway. It doesn't open up anything legal. It is very narrow, but it will bring them relief. I changed my position and supported it. I pretty much went through this. I'm gonna skip through this. These are the two, things that the governor has said we're coming back in a special session for. Bail reform and election security. There's a lot of work being done to try to get some other things added to it, like the vaccines and other things I've talked about there. The other things that didn't pass, the 10-day end of life rule. I don't know if you all know this or not, but we still have the problem here in Texas. If you go to the hospital and you're on a respirator and the hospital decides that your life is not worth living because of whatever it is, they and they alone can pull the plug. You, your family, I don't care what directive you've given them, what you wrote to them, what your will says, you have no say in it at all. All they have to do is give you 10 days and they pull the plug. And they tried this 2 years ago with little baby Tinsley, 9-month-old little baby girl. And the hospital said her life is not worth living. You know, we give you 10 days. I drug on a little bit, and finally the court stopped in and said, no, you're not going to do that. Little baby Tinsley just had her 2nd birthday. Ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying, using your tax dollars to go to Austin and lobby against stuff we're trying to do to protect you or to lower your taxes or whatever it is, makes no sense at all. And it did not. Now, there was a lot of misinformation about this bill out there. This bill did not prohibit an elected official from interfacing, discussing issues, or going to Austin, or visiting, and getting reimbursed for expenses, or belonging to an association, or getting training or insurance with an association. No, it strictly was focused on people going down there to Austin to lobby against things like the bill we had to put in, to make sure we never have a state income tax in Texas. Taxpayer-funded lobbying lobbied against that bill. They also lobbied against annexation down there. And so it didn't make it, but again, not much done on property tax reform. There were a couple of bills on it, but it's going to take a while to get that. We did nothing to roll back the governor's executive powers, and we did nothing to protect monuments. Those bills got through, and we did nothing to protect little children from being mutilated. And our interstate compact for border security I mentioned earlier, again, it died in the House, and women's sports. Now, what's coming up? We're going back, that's for sure.
I call every day.
Okay. Redistricting, if nothing else. We should have had the data in March. Federal government's still sitting on it. They're not gonna let us have it until late September, October timeframe is what we're at. But if we can get the maps drawn by the 22nd of November, we will be able to hold the primaries as scheduled in March. Anything after that, they're gonna start to slide to the right. Now, I'm getting near the end here, just got a couple of things here. I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, new friend that I met this session. He's a lobbyist, a citizen lobbyist. He's a special ed citizens lobbyist. Special ed kid that had a problem. See, Edgar couldn't attend school like a normal child could. He had to have special help, and that included someone with his lessons that turned his paperwork into the school. And when he got through the end of the senior year, he got his grades and he failed for not turning in any work. See, the person helping him did not turn in the work he had done. And there was a little quirk in the law that prevented him from being able to recover from that. And so he lost his scholarship and he ended up going to a community college. And there, so Edgar wanted to have a little change, not a big change, in the law, so that this never happened to another person. And so he was down there in the Capitol almost every day, going from office to office. I think he spoke to everyone from the governor, lieutenant governor, House members, the senators in there. Spent a lot of time in our office, and he was on the floor when we brought it to the floor, and that's Edgar sitting up there in the gallery with his friend. who helps him get around. Edgar's in the pink shirt. You see, Edgar had no arms and no legs. One of the smartest people I've ever talked to. One of the most personally upbeat, absolutely a joy to be around, and extremely intelligent. And so when I was laying out the bill for him, I started out, I said, you know, I wish that I had made this the Edgar Pacheco bill because of his work. Well, I didn't pay any attention, and I just noticed that Senator Taylor was called up to the dais while I was starting to talk by our Lieutenant Governor Patrick. And then when I finished laying out the bill, Larry stood up and he was recognized, and he said, Mr. President, I'd like to move that we amend this bill and name it the Edgar Pacheco bill. And so we did. And so it will forever be known as the Edward Pacheco bill. And I show you this not just because I was really proud to work with him, but my question is, what's your excuse?
Amen.
What's your excuse for not being more involved in this? Because we are a government of the people and by the people, and that's real. And we only have the problems in Austin and Washington because the people didn't do a good enough job in who they picked to put there, and then they left them there, even when they knew they weren't doing what was right, because it was just easier to, the day before going to the polls or the day of going to the polls, call a friend and say, who should I vote for? Because you have no clue of who you're voting for. So, with that, let me stop there. There were hands that went up. I know there are some questions here asking, so, yes ma'am.
Just real quick, you started your presentation talking about like the Republicans that are in office and the Democrats, and right now they're in power. How do you feel about that going forward? Because I know, not that we have any conservative Californians in here, but we do have such an influx of them coming in and changing our policies and politics. But I also know that at the border, there was also some recent changes in the last election, especially what's going on. So we're seeing a large turnover with them becoming more Republican versus Democrat. So how do you see that going forward? How do we maintain what we've got right now? I think that's very important. And I guess that's my question for you.
Okay. Yes, I'd say it's growing, and it's changing. It changed with the last election. It's changing with the Californians, the Oregons, and the Washingtons moving here. The polls that I have seen show that it's about 60-40 in conservative of those moving here. And the 60% are mostly from people who are fed up individually and just relocate to Texas because they want to come here. The 40% is being made up of the businesses that are moving here, and then they're pulling the people here. And so that's how you're getting that mix that's coming in here. The other is the sea change that is taking place out there in both the Hispanic and the Black community that we saw in November. And what we're seeing is what Ronald Reagan said when they asked him why he left the Democrat Party. He said, I didn't leave the Democrat Party, the party left me. And right now, the biggest support we have for why people should be thinking about Republican in office is the utter insanity of the nonsense that's coming out of Washington, and what's happening in Washington is just so out of step with what we have left in Judeo-Christian values here in Texas that it is driving people away. And we saw that in November last year when we had many of our border counties and other counties shifted significantly 20, 30, 40 points from Democrat to Republican. We have counties down there that voted for Trump, 12% or more. We had a huge, we just got a Republican mayor in McAllen, Texas, in there, folks, because they're seeing, as they listen, what we're talking about in families and protecting life and individual rights and responsibilities. it fits with individuals. They have just listened to, the community. It's been a crowd kind of thing. You know, I live with a bunch of Democrats, so I'm not gonna go against them, I'll just vote Democrat. But it's gotten to the point that there's such a stark difference. It's not like where it used to be, where I looked at Democrats, just kind of had a little bit different way of doing the same thing. That's not it. We are as far as the East is from the West apart in this. And those folks that have some values, that have some beliefs, are seeing that. So I think the opportunity is here that we could actually turn things around and get us back to closer to the roots of true conservative, limited government, fiscal responsibility, personal responsibility, free enterprise, etc., that our government's intended for us to be. So I think it looks good. But it ain't gonna happen if all we do is sit home and hope somebody else is gonna do the job. Where's Pauline? Pauline Dietrich, I saw her, there she is. She runs a group over there, and every meeting I've been to, and there, she ends it by having everybody stand up and say, if it is to be, it is up to me. And so by golly, you know, if you wanna see something different, it's time for you to, you know, get involved. Because it is a government of the people. It doesn't work. That's not communism work. That's how socialism. You take a little group and you leave them alone and they run everything to their advantage. So got one behind you and I'll come back to you. Yes, sir.
A suspicious person would like to know why the census data is delayed, what they're up to, and how we can thwart whatever their awful plans are.
I've asked that question myself and don't get any answer. They said that they just don't have the people because of the COVID. That was the answer I was getting. I don't buy it. I don't trust it. I'm gonna be very leery of it when we get it. And I don't even know how we verify that what we're getting is even right. And so I am sincerely worried about it.
Can you kind of touch on, the takeover of the left trying to turn Texas blue in one way or to local elections, you know, and how important it is that we do need to get involved in our local elections and be ahead of the game, because they're already registered people to vote, even now, they're preparing for the 2020 election, so. Just kind of like put more emphasis on us as conservatives need to be, you know, educating and also getting more involved with grassroots.
Oh, absolutely. It is a full-time job. I mean, and what we don't have are enough qualified people standing up and saying, you know, I'm willing to give back. Recognize, you know, God's been pretty doggone good to me. Maybe he's done it for a reason, and it's time for me to give back. Because going into government is a service. It is supposed to be a service, but we don't have enough people. Our bench is really thin. We should have people lined up wanting to get into at the city council, on the school boards, and in other places. All right. Ray, go ahead.
Okay. Senator, do you feel like the election integrity bills that we have here in Texas as well as across the nation are going to be enough to turn the tide so we don't have to worry about fraud?
As long as we have men and women, humans involved in it, we will always have a problem. We can't pass enough laws. What we have to have are more people involved in the election process. We don't have enough people to be poll watchers everywhere. We don't even have any precinct chairs for every seat. Until the people decide to get involved and participate and do their little bit, and we get enough people doing that, we can pass all the laws in the world, and you're still gonna get fraud. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here, sir. I have a question, to our citizens really, and I know that you're doing what you can, but we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing?
Amen.
Okay? So if you're here, just sitting here visiting, if you're not acting, you're not doing a damn thing.
Amen.
Okay? I mean, that's my message to you. So I'm a new precinct chair, okay? I my precinct was empty, I don't know how long it's been empty, but I've been an activist and fighting for this fight for a while, even through cancer, and I don't care. But appreciate what you're doing and saying, but it's really our job to do this,
What
okay?
precinct?
2511, Richardson, Texas, okay? So, believe me, these people know what's fixing to get, okay? Because I am there, because I already have a plan, a map, and I'm calling on people that, all the data that I got, oh God, there was a godsend. I know who voted, who didn't vote, and I'm fixing to be on their door going, okay, I need you, okay? So, we need to get on board. But my question to you is, why are we, allowing the voting machines to be in place? We need to go back to the old way, and some paper ballot, and we sign, we need to have IDs, the machines are not reliable.
You're absolutely right, and that's part of one of the changes I've got is recognizing that, answer the question, why in the world are we using a $3,500 piece of expensive computer system to mark a paper ballot? Now that we understand that we have to have paper ballots, why don't we just replace that $3,500 machine with a number 2 pencil and get the same thing? I do have that, in there, we would go back to hand-marked paper ballots and eliminate the machine, and there are a couple other things in there. There are things that we do to further answer Ray's question that tightens, instead of having this hole big enough to drive a truck through, let's get it down to this little knot hole where it makes it very difficult for them, and we'll do that. So, yes, ma'am.
I just had a question about, the drugs that you take for COVID. One of those I've never heard of, the top one.
The quercetin.
Where do you get that?
It's at the drugstore.
That's right.
Yeah, make sure you,
It's a supplement.
Walgreens has it, CVS have it, independent drugstores have it. The information is on this flyer, be sure you take one with you. Okay. Yes, ma'am. I haven't been involved in that. I was asked if I could go over and watch it, I couldn't. I was committed to other things like being here, and so I don't know what they're doing over there. It's gonna be,
You know, some of our, that are trying to set up conservative values are sometimes being overwhelmed with these things that make the news that are totally.
oh, they are, I mean, the news, the mainstream media is not gonna tell you anything truthful.
A mixture of those, but the things that, you know, I have just researched on my own, I have great thoughts about the actual ballots just being handed over to someone who has no, expertise in dealing with those, and then coming in with various big time, scary type of situations. So I don't know, hopefully we won't get to that point in Texas.
I hope not.
We want to stand with the conservatives, but we don't want to stand with the crazies.
Right, absolutely. Mrs. Zimmerman.
Having gone out to Central County, everything they show on national television about our elections and the fraud in the elections in the United States, everything on that occurs in Dallas County every year. I
Yep.
went down there, they've thrown me out, they won't let me in the room, they restrict my access, they say you're here to see the ballot board, not Central County. I show them the paperwork that says Central County, they ignore it. Tippins Pool was the biggest cheater you could ever find. She had me thrown out by the Secretary of State, just, you name it. I mean, we need to do exactly what Arizona is doing and pick a county. Dallas County, Harris County, Bexar County, Travis County, pick them. All of them will cheat just as bad as they did in the national election, and I guarantee you'll find a ton of fraud. That's right. I turned in 2 affidavits down in Austin, and both were ignored promptly.
Truck one.
I'm sure we probably will. I only got so much energy, and I rather put mine in fixing what we know. I don't need to have it proven to me. It already has been. I need to put my energy into doing the stuff that will stop it in there, so.
Okay, so since we're talking about things that's already proven, I wanna know, what's the name of the committee chairman that didn't allow the power company to answer the question? That's how they justify the question. What's the name of that committee chairman?
That was down in Business and Commerce.
Huh?
It was in Business and Commerce.
Chairman of Business and Commerce.
Yeah.
Okay, second question is, did the chairman give an excuse as to why the power company, he didn't want the power company
It
answer?
was gonna be covered, later.
Was it?
No.
No. Okay. Tilly?
I'm really concerned, and as you know, over the years, with the electric grid. When it comes down to this, it affects every single person. And we need to have, I don't understand why, because it's everybody. I don't care what you are, Democrat, Republican, whatever else. This affects everyday life. And for us not to vote for the very best protection of our electric grid is criminal. And I want to know for you, I'm so concerned with this and have been for years, what steps can you help me know where to go from here? And I know it's kind of a game with people in Austin, and I know they got 17,000 lobbyists down there.
Okay.
But tell me what you think and I will shout it from the rooftop, how we can help you get this done.
Need to talk to your friends that live in other areas that have reps, senators in other areas to get involved in passing that message on to them. And then we need to make this known to the governor's office. Lieutenant Governor is on board. He's with me. We got, don't bombard him with it now. He's in support of it. But the governor's office needs to hear from more people. That's how he makes his decisions on what he does, is how many people contact him on something. All right, let me take one more, and I've got to go because I've got to get to another event for some scouts, and I don't want to be late for that.
Well, this is just a kudo. I watched the Senate hearings that you held on COVID with the 4 doctors.
Mhm.
I shared those videos with so many people. They did not know the information that came from those hearings. They were so appreciative, because we all know mainstream media doesn't cover it. But I'm sure you're probably one of the main people who instigated that, forced those hearings. I am grateful for you, because that educated.
Hang on, we got more coming with that. So with that, thank you. If you have something you didn't get answered, I'm sorry, we gotta leave. Let me do one thing before we go. With all our elected officials that are here, stand up. Who do we have? And candidates. What do we got for candidates? All right. Well, anyway, I thank you all for being here, and if you don't remember anything else, remember what was said here about getting involved. It's your government, and you're gonna get what you put into it. It's what's gonna come back to you in there. So get involved. Government is run by those who show up. God bless you. God bless Texas.
This is great, thank you for volunteering.
We need to make sure that Texas Senator Bob Hall is reelected. So if you're in his district, in his county, I'm gonna be helping campaign for him, putting the word out. So
She's a force of nature.
involved and make sure that Bob Hall is reelected.
You know what's the way to get started. Great, sweetie. I was talking to him, and he said he was going to give me a
Here's my last one.
Oh.
Yeah, it's good to see you.